Lagos Talks 91.3.
Madam, you are welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
To me, she fit as a proper role model that must be celebrated. Not in the world of journalism, in the world of entrepreneurship, in the world of broadcasting, in the world of traversing from that end to this end. She has shown herself as a good model for the womanhood, for the womanhood. And I said it about 3 minutes ago before she walked in that my habit is to celebrate people while they are still very much around, if I know they are good. I would never be one of those that will name a street after somebody after he's dead. I want to do exactly what the late Bobby Besson, one of the musicians that first of all rose and moved music to in Nigeria, did. Bobby Besson was alive. He decided, he wrote his will. Then one day he invited journalists, he invited all his children and told them, my will is ready. My will is ready. What I want to do is this. My will will be read today. So all of you will have opportunity of thanking me for giving you one thing or the other. I will hate a situation after my death before the will is read. Mm-hmm. So that is my passion. I celebrate those that are worthy to be celebrated while they are very, very much around. For this reason, I think the later one is done already. Madam, I brought you here. I want to celebrate you.
I am so grateful for the honor. Thank you so much. You're too kind and generous with praise. I think it's a measure of great men that they don't stint on speaking about other people's goodness. So thank you. I celebrate you too.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much for coming. Then again, you are so involved in the Nigeria scheme, in the Nigeria matters, the political man. Not to think of 2011, 2014, 2019, where you were so very much involved in the debate among those who were.
And 2023?
2023, that's good. That's good. It tells me that there is something about the Nigerian nation that worries you every now and then, that you want to think of. You want to see a better Nigeria emerging. So
I think that is probably true of every Nigerian. First of all, it's enlightened self-interest. It's a bit selfish in the sense that a working Nigeria means a better life for me and for everybody else. So there is a reason, I think, why we all want to see a better Nigeria is enlightened self-interest. But I think the second thing for someone like me is that a functional Nigeria will actually have a ripple effect, not just within the continent, but globally. Mm-hmm. One of the problems that we have at the moment is if you look globally, the black man is at the bottom of what you call the global hierarchy. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. We are mistreated, we are treated badly, our resources are taken to build other countries, etc., etc. And even in developed countries where you have a black population that I consider indigenous. What do I mean? So the United States of America, where there have been black people for well over 500 years.
Yes.
Some of them were there before the white man came. Yeah. Others were brought as slaves. Mm. And if you look at their position within the American society, they still remain at the bottom of that hierarchy, including if you compare them to immigrants who came and met them there. So like the way the Asians are treated, or, Europeans from, let's say, Ireland who immigrated during the potato famine, who came a little bit later. And I think the reason is simple. We don't have a globally recognized black nation that is a global power. So black people don't, if you like, have a homeland that can speak for them, that can protect them. I believe the emancipation of black people globally is linked. And I think Nigeria, more than any other country in the world, is positioned and has the potential to take that leadership and change the fate of not just Nigerians but the black race, which is why what is happening to us is very disheartening.
Okay. Thank you for that introduction, because you move us to the heart of the whole discussion.
Yes.
Now, I'm here to ask you questions.
Sure. I hope I can answer them.
Yes. And the questions are
I'm used to being on the other side.
And the questions are meant to see how we can better the voyage of discovery that we are back upon as a country, and we are not even seeing the light of where we are sailing to. So that is why the question. So I will take them bits so that we can tackle as well, because in the next how many minutes we should be finished. Okay. Now, madam, with what you describe now as the black man's dilemma.
Yes.
That's a chapter of a book I remember many years ago, The Black Man's Dilemma.
Or The Wretched of the Earth, Frantz Fanon.
Aha. Now, let us look at Nigeria today. The political development as the way. What future do you see between now and 2027?
The indices, if one is going to be completely objective, don't look good. If you look at our productivity, for example, we are an import-dependent country.
Yes.
There's a reason our currency has collapsed.
Yes.
Not all of it. Part of it is policy, but part of it is that genuinely, if you go back and look at the 70s, we are children of the sort of late 70s and early 80s. Even then, when we were complaining, the quantum of production within Nigeria, I saw a list someone produced the other day. It was really long. The sort of things we were doing, we were assembling cars, we had factories producing cable, we had so many things we were doing.
Tires,
we had tires, there was so much we had going for us.
We have butter that
now
that
literally everything we consume, including toothpick, we import. And it's a problem because we're not exporting anything to other places apart from crude. And the mismanagement that happened over the last few years, but particularly in the last 8 years under President Muhammadu Buhari, meant that we have forward sold our crude. What does that mean? They borrowed money and promised crude that had not been actually extracted yet in payment. So even the crude we're selling now, not all of the money is coming to us. Because
we've collected money.
Yes. We'd always said, even before the elections, and it's interesting that when President Tinubu was told a few times at different forums that whoever inherits this economy is going to be in a big trouble because so much has been done and recovering will be very difficult, he kind of treated with a bit of lightness and he said no.
He underestimated it?
I think he underestimated it, because I remember him at the Kaduna Investment Forum when this issue was raised by the current emir of Kano. At that time he wasn't on his throne, Muhammadu Sanusi II, on the issue of the problems that are going on. If they're not tackled, whoever comes in next is going to have problems. President Tinubu basically said no, we kind of know what the issues are. We're going to resolve them. So clearly he underestimates the scope of the problem. But I've also been a bit disappointed in the way he has chosen to deal with the issues. I think in the beginning he was too, maybe he didn't understand the weight of a president speaking. You know, the way he just dropped the issue of we have removed subsidy.
Yes, and
no preparations were made, and then floating the naira. It suggests that perhaps he doesn't understand the importance of being the president of Nigeria and the sort of impact your words have. Because since then, we've not been able to, recover from that. This kind of major decisions need to be announced in a very measured way. They need to be announced after you've actually put mitigation, mitigation, things in the background. You've done your work, and I kind of felt that he was very knee-jerk in the way he took these decisions. And now I'm also not really satisfied with his cabinet, with the people he's put in charge of resolving some of these issues. You look at the quality of the people who are dealing with some of the most existential issues that we're facing. Let me speak about the North, for example, where security has basically wrecked the region completely, We used to have certain things going for us. There was a relative peace in the North for a very long time because by and large our population was mostly rural and people farm and ate. And once people are not hungry, a lot of things are fine. They're not concerned with everything. Exactly. Now we can't feed ourselves, right? A region that should be feeding itself, feeding the whole of Nigeria and even exporting food cannot feed itself. We're beginning to see visible sign of malnutrition, and there are a number of issues that are causing this. One of them is climate, which was sort of predicted ages ago, so we never put mitigation. But the other is insecurity. Look at the people they have put in charge of security in Nigeria. What's their track record in terms of, what they've done? What experience do they have to tackle insecurity? And so, I hate to say this, but it looks like political expediency is overtaking public good in some of the decisions he's making, especially around appointments. Okay.
Now, you've moved me to an area that I probably would have come into, but probably late. President Bola Tinubu came with a system. He has his cabinet, which is a classroom, his class. And he appointed a prefect. And the prefect, Usman, Hadiza Bala Usman, looked like a prefect of the class. And he told them during the retreat that if you are not performing, look at the person that will be giving your performances and this report. So go and meet him. Now we heard it. We heard it very, very obviously that, the president is trying to reshuffle his cabinet, is removing those that. Were those things supposed to be announced as Bayo put it before us? That is one question. Or that announcement could encourage a system of people going through the backyard to say, please don't remove me. Could that equally encourage bribery that goes with lobbying? That is one set of the question. Then the other one is obviously, what happened to the class of Bola Tinubu and the prefect appointed?
Okay, so I happen to know that Hadiza has done a really great job of putting together a dashboard for measuring what the cabinet is doing, like you put it. So
you know that.
I know that for a fact because I've sat down with her, I've looked at the work she's doing. She's doing a fantastic job. And even if you see them around her, the ministers, they're a little bit wary because they are very concerned. And she has a reputation for being a no-nonsense person. So I think she will give a scorecard that I think it will be legitimate and where she can defend it anywhere.
But you see, at the
end, that's the point I'm making. That at the end of the day, though, all she can do is submit. The ultimate person who would decide whether to go with that work that has been done is the principle that have appointed the people. Now, I can't speculate about why he chose to announce this thing, right? Because you could be right. Those who feel that maybe they're not performing, he's giving them a window to lobby the right thing or the wrong thing. The right thing would be to ramp up their performance and see whether they can improve enough to stay. The wrong thing is they could try and make a fickle mindset this government needs to adopt in order to make things slightly better. First of all, I think they need to cut down on the cost of government. I am told from people in there that actually the cost of government has ballooned. So instead of us seeing government expenditure when it comes to especially not capital expenditure, recurrent expenditure, consumption, where you are consuming without producing, I think that needs to be reduced. I would have fewer ministers, to be honest, if I was the one in charge. I would cut down on, he doesn't need as many planes. One good plane is good for him. All of the entertainment that they do, you hear they're spending money on kitchen, on this, on that. All of those things are not necessary. A father cannot look. It's like on your table as a father, you have orishirishi, you have amala, you have begiri, you have all of the things, pounded yam, efodiro, all of those things, right? are on that table, and you are sitting with a tiny minority of people eating, and then the rest of your children in the millions, they are there scrounging for things to eat, and you keep telling them
they could not get access to.
You keep telling them to sacrifice. Leadership is sacrifice. You can't really lead if you are not willing to sacrifice. And I think a few of us are hoping that Asiwaju will really listen, because I think he represents an opportunity, right? He came from opposition, right? He spent a long time in opposition, has a history of fighting for this democracy that we are enjoying, paid a really huge price for, at some point he was in exile. So when a person like that, now is given the reins of power, a lot is expected, because you expect that he has empathy, understanding for what's going on with the average man, and that he will make a difference. And I am hoping and praying that we see that sort of mindset come to governance. I'm not quite sure that it has now, but he's a year in government, right? So I'm just hoping he has people around him that are able to tell him the truth. We saw a few presidents in the past, Jonathan, Buhari, who people told what they wanted to hear, and the consequences are so obvious to us. I am hoping Asiwaju will have the wisdom, and he's sort of shown it in the past, which is why people were excited, because he ran opposition and ran it well. Yes, he surrounded himself with technocrats, with good people. I hope he's able to take advice from people who can tell him the truth. Okay,
Madia, there's one question I will throw to you last.
Okay.
Let me just say it out so that you can remind me if I'm forgetting.
I hope I remember.
You mentioned a lot of things. Your favorite meal, I will ask about that when we're about to sign
My favorite who?
Food, yes. Because when you were mentioning this thing, my truth was this. Yes. So we'll come to that. But now, the Bola Tinubu that showed that exigency, that astute management of bringing technocrats around himself, was displayed most importantly when he was Lagos State governor.
Yes.
His tenure as a Lagos State governor had taken very deep to almost 20 years.
Yes.
How much logic really will be there for people to expect that the age that has dwindled for the past 20 years, plus the fact that this is Lagos State with the geographical location, which is not Nigeria, that the man would come and perform?
And I think that is I think that's part of his weakness that we see in government. It isn't just that it was 20 years ago. I think part of Asiwaju's problem is that he puts a premium on loyalty, and I'm told that is something that politicians value, and I understand why. What do I mean by that? A lot of the people who were in his cabinet 20 years ago are the people he has also put in charge of Nigeria. But what did they do in the 20 years between when they were running Lagos and now?
No.
Not a lot. So they are also older, like he is. So you have to understand their energy levels are not the same. But it's not even that. In the last 10 years, if you look at the global economy and what's happening, from 2015 to 2024, the whole world has actually shifted.
Yes.
Because we've entered a tech world, and, things are now being driven by technology.
Artificial intelligence.
Yeah, the geopolitics are shifting. What is happening with America, the fear of losing influence, the rise of Donald Trump. All of that has had an impact in the way the global economy has shifted. But we now have people who are still living in the sort of 20-25 years ago, trying to manage. Yes. So I'd like to see younger people in positions within his cabinet. I'd like to see people who've actually done tangible because in the end, what is a minister? It's an administrator. If you've never managed so much as a cake shop or a mama put, why are we putting you in charge of a whole ministry? You know what I mean? A whole country. And this is, I think, part of the biggest weakness when you look at some of the people in his cabinet. You look and you see they've not done anything. And then you bring them and you say, okay, you take charge of this, you take charge of that. Recently, I had cause to complain. As part of a group of women, we wrote a letter to him officially and sent it also to the National Assembly. He set up a Northwest Development Commission, right? 2 problems with that Northwest Development Commission. In fact, 3. First of all, barely anyone on that commission is qualified. If you look at their CVs, they've never done anything around climate and mitigation, peace and conflict, budgeting, the economy. This is a development commission. Yes, it's supposed to sort of kickstart, solve issues for us, because we are in very bad shape right now in that Northwest, right? The quality of the people on that board leaves a lot to be desired. 2, they are all men. Right?
No woman?
No, not a single woman. Meanwhile, on the ground in these regions, it is actually women who are doing the weaving job. They're the ones working with communities, and the little changes that you are seeing, the little differences are being driven by women. And not a single Christian, right? So you have a group of people who come from the same place, who are not qualified, and then to make it matter, they're not inclusive. Because my state, Zamfara, has a sizable minority Christian population in the areas of Zuru. This is the state that is at the epicenter of these conflicts. What, you couldn't find a single Christian who qualified to put on that board. Kaduna State, the same thing. The southern Kaduna there, you couldn't find a single Christian. You couldn't find a single woman. And so these are the sorts of decisions that are making us begin to question whether the interest is genuinely in development. Letter got to him.
Is it being followed up?
It is being followed up by a group of women who are sort of a little bit better than me in terms of their temper. Well, they kind of know how to manage lobbying behind the scenes and all of that. Better than someone like me.
Better than you.
They put me in front of the mic, and then they cannot go and do the important work behind the scenes.
Finally, can Nigeria take government back to themselves?
Okay, so that's what I was about to say. My hope lies not in politicians but in people. And I think genuinely people have to make up their minds whether they want to take charge of their country or not. It's really that simple. And it's hard because poverty has been weaponized, right? And people who don't have money find it really difficult to resist the politics of money. I get it. But
look what happened
everywhere in the world, is always a tiny minority that make a difference. So my call has always been that, look, we need to go back to our communities and organize our communities. One hamlet at a time, one village at a time. If you are not a weaver, and every community has weavers. People that you see around, they're always the ones helping. Even when it comes to things like somebody has had a baby, raising money to help to take that person to the hospital. Those are the people within our communities we need to identify and then support them to start building a consensus around what should happen. It's interesting you talk about Edo, because I spoke to Olumide Akpata shortly after the elections that he lost, the Edo State government elections. And I asked him, what was the most surprising thing about this election? That was my first question to him. I said, Kadaria, during the elections, we went around explaining to people why they shouldn't take money, or if they take money, they should still vote their conscience. And we thought we had built a consensus. On election day, I sat and watched people, including my so-called supporters, collect 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 and sell their vote. His heart was breaking when Olumide was telling me this. You could hear it in his voice. I mean, it was a radio program. I could see him also on Zoom. And this speaks to the despair. And I think if you are a man or a woman and you wake up and you have 2 children and they have no food, genuinely, and you go to a place where they're saying take 5,000, you're weighing whether your children should eat versus some sort of long-term promises of, okay, if you vote, things are going to get better. Is a very difficult choice. But that is why people like us who understand, we need to leave Lagos and Abuja and the Kanos and the Katsinas. We need to start engaging with our communities. We have started, I myself and a few friends, we go home a little bit more regularly. And if I tell him going home for me has a lot of danger.
Of course.
Because it's the epicenter of banditry, but you have to do it. And when you go, you are a little bit detached. People will not trust you because, you are Oyibo to them. You are
foreign.
In fact, you are part of the problem. That's how they see you. So what you do is you work with community leaders. You empower them. You encourage people to also learn how to feed themselves. If you have land in your house, please start farming. Use pots, use sack. All these new farming methods. Because I think if people are not hungry, everything becomes easier. So the biggest issue is food. So try and find a way to help your communities learn how to feed themselves. It's a starting point. And then begin to hold leaders accountable. Get involved in local government elections. Make sure the people you elect as local government chairmen are people you know.
Is it with this type of local government election?
It doesn't matter. You see, the thing is, what you don't understand is
because the one that baffled me most.
You see, my problem with people is that people think nation building takes a year or two. It is not. It's a lifetime's work. There's nothing that happens overnight. The seed you plant, you don't know at which point it is going to gestate and when that tree will grow. So you have to look at the acorn tree. Tiny little thing, and then by the time it grows up, but it takes years and years and years and years. So the point I'm making is you must get involved. You must want a better Nigeria and do your little bit to make it happen. You can't keep sitting and expecting other people to do it for it. Certainly not these politicians. They've sold their soul.
Okay. Now, what would an answer be to the situation that a few youngsters came up and protested that bad governance, and most of them were arrested, and they were being charged for treasonable felony?
Yes, wrong. As we saw it during NSAS, and we're seeing it's basically using the apparatus of the state to muzzle dissent. It's not acceptable, not in a democracy, not with a president who himself ran into exile because he was being prosecuted for wanting democracy. Not for a president who we've seen on the streets demonstrating, carrying a placard, to now say that people who've done the same thing, no, it's not acceptable. And I think lawyers need to start volunteering to do pro bono work for these young people, and NGOs and civil society need to sort of rally behind them and make sure that they don't remain in jail. No, it's wrong.
Do you see any hope in the youngsters?
Absolutely. Gen Z rock. They are absolutely amazing. They have their small issues, but overall, and it's not a Nigerian thing, it's a global thing. They are changing the game. If you look at the Israel's genocide in Palestine and their recent aggression in Lebanon, it is young people in Europe and in America that are leading the charge of trying to force these issues. In South Africa, in Senegal, it is young people who are taking to the streets. Gen Z for me. Yes, Gen Z for me are the hope of this world that we live in, because they are fearless, right? And they've refused to buy the bullshit. Forgive my language. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that on radio. Yeah. But they've refused to be divided along ethnic, religious, and all sorts of lines. The usual divide and rule tactics that Oyibo used on us, and then we now took it, and our politicians are using the same thing. They're refusing to do it. They are seeing humanity before anything else. I like Gen Z a lot.
Okay.
I have kids who are Gen Z too.
Oh, that's good.
Yes.
Where's my bed? Let me celebrate them. Your kids that are Gen Z, let me celebrate them.
Okay. Aliyah, Aderisola, Orinda Mola, Adeshida.
Oh, that's good.
Umar Farouk Adegboyega, Aderigbigbe, Oluwafemi Adeshida.
That's good.
Lovely kids.
That's good. Let me celebrate them once again. Now, let me put this question for you, and I will stop it there, but there is a story. I will tell it again. Because I've been around for quite a long time. I will tell the story. When the government, president, he claimed to be president as against head of state, Babangida came to power. Ebenezer Babatokwe, we call him a Brisu or Biso, something like that. He went to Kenya to go and meet the late Obafemi Awolowo. And he said that Obafemi Awolowo told him something, and told him that Ebino, your generation may not see real democracy again. Because President Babangida went to him and told him that, sir, I respect you, and everyone knows that. I am here to ask something of you. In fact, when he got in there, he came in with a little crowd and he prostrated to him. He said, no, sir, I am here as your son. Not as and he told him that, please, anything that I do wrong, I want you to criticize me, but not publicly. Send for me, I will personally come here. Then you lay it. And when he was to say this, he prostrated again. Obafemi Awolowo, according to my source of information, said he looked at it, told him, get up. He said, no, sir, until you give me the positive. He said, okay, I promise you, I will not criticize you publicly. If there's any reason. Then he now turned to his man and told him that with that action, I now know that not mine, your generation may not know real democracy. With what we are saying today now, this is the final question. Do you think our generations, I am now including your generation to my generation, having been in the bush, will have any energy left in us when we come to the public to see democracy be practiced in Nigeria?
So I think, first of all, let me say that I think when people talk about democracy, they always make the mistake of thinking democracy is just about elections and elective office. And democracy is much more than that.
Okay.
Elections are the obvious manifestation of democracy. But democracy is having a country where human rights matter. Democracy is a place where people have the right to criticize and not be hauled into jail. Democracy is the right to education, is the right to clean water, is the right to health, is the right. So there's a whole lot that democracy embodies. That, and I think part of the reason why Nigeria has gotten itself into trouble is that for a long time we allowed ourselves to be fooled into thinking democracy is just about going in to the polling unit and voting. But even the presence of internal party democracy is a precursor to having real democracy. If you have political parties where they themselves are not allowed to democratically elected the people that they put on the ballot paper, by the time you go to the polls, elections have been hijacked.
Of course.
It's no longer right. So I think we need to start thinking about democracy in a sort of wider way, and sort of understand that before you even get to the polling unit, there are a lot of things that need to happen for us to have a full democracy and begin to work.
Even the processes that bring in the candidates that we are being directed to.
How you appoint the umpire that runs the elections is part of what determines whether you have a real democracy or not. When the person that is part of the election is responsible for deciding the judge of the elections, there are always going to be issues.
If you want to be a part of us, first off, follow us across all social media pages at Lagos Talks 913 is our handle, and of course kindly like, share, subscribe, and make sure you're a part of the Lagos Talks family.